Almost 7 months into Joe Biden's presidency, and the border remains an utter disaster. Video shows more illegal immigrants crammed into a room amid rising COVID fears. And we're just getting staggering new numbers. Agents apprehended 212,000 migrants just during the month of July, breaking yet another 20-year record. To put things in perspective, the numbers have gone up every single month since President Biden was sworn in. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was down at the border today trying to downplay the situation.
The situation at the border is one of the toughest challenges we face. We have seen surges in migration before. We've seen them in the past, and migration surges are not new.
And while Biden officials try to claim there isn't a crisis, take a look at this Texas judge who deals with the situation firsthand.
We are all very, very frustrated because what people don't understand, this is not just a border crisis. We keep calling it a border crisis, but in all reality, it's a national crisis. President Biden has really failed the American people and failing us there in the border. We are basically battling a war against these refugees that are coming illegally with our hands behind our back, tied with our hands behind our back, not understanding, not having the resource to be able to do this.
Greg, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
What should I do with it? It's really dirty.
I think you should
clean
it up for
I know,
one
it
thing.
is absolutely awful.
That's the problem with Outnumbered. They leave it a mess.
I know.
Never should have leased it out.
It's terrible. So I think this spectacle is the best education for the viewer to see how corporate media actually works. You ask yourself, why do these photos not matter? Why does the suffering not matter? Because the media's team is in power. And the corporate media has turned every facet of life into a team sport, whether it's the border, whether it's COVID or law enforcement. They find out what side they're against, and they just pick the other side. They pick the other side. So that's what's happening here. So it tells you that under Trump, the concern about kids in cages was mere kabuki theater. It was just false outrage because on behalf of their team, who are out of power, the Dems. So you can contrast the dramatic changes in behavior. Outrage under Trump, ambivalence under Biden. So what that tells you is it's not about immigrants. It's about our disgusting dirtbag media. Because life doesn't matter to them. Politics does. Their politics does. They don't care about these people. To make it more infuriating, compare the media's demonic mockery of unmasked Americans versus, again, complete ambivalence towards illegals streaming in who may have COVID or do have COVID. So that begs a question. Is COVID really that bad if the Democrats are fine letting in people who have it? Of course it is. It's bad. But they just possess the consistency of a crackhead. So there you go.
I'm just thinking about that consistency of a crackhead. Totally agree.
Brian understands, right?
Yeah, Brian.
Too well.
So if you look at the poll numbers, Biden has a 35% approval on immigration, 57% disapprove, Martha. So if anything, the White House has always been tethered to the poll numbers. And so maybe this is the best chance for the country to have some semblance of order at the border because they're most likely to react to not the suffering, not the children being put at risk, not the fentanyl coming across the border, but, it hurts them in the White House because people are upset with their policy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the polls. There's another poll that's also really interesting to look at, which is the independent voters broken down in those numbers. And President Trump had approval on immigration issues among independent voters at 39%. Which is pretty high, actually, given the politics and the controversy over that. Biden is at 31% with independents. Those are the voters that are going to be looking at these issues when it comes time in 2022. And it's been a really rough week for the Biden White House. There's no doubt about it. I know we're going to talk about Afghanistan in a moment. But when you look at inflation, you look at the rise of COVID with the Delta variant, you look at what's going on at the border, there's a bit of whack-a-mole going on in terms of how to manage these crises. And when I listen to the Homeland Security head down at the border, it's almost like it's like a Baghdad Bob situation. I mean, you look at what he's saying, and they're speaking past each other in terms of the two narratives on this. He's saying the border's closed, right? And then he's saying, well, the problem is that, which obviously it isn't. He says in the next sentence, 212,000 people came across the border in July. So it's quite obvious that the border is not closed. I mean, it's very clear to Americans, except that, as Greg rightfully points out, it's not being covered in too many places, except here and others. But then he also talks about how the Trump administration dismantled and destabilized the whole system at the border. And what he's really referring to there is the question of how they dealt with unaccompanied minors. And we all know the history on that, and kids in cages. It was very difficult period in the Trump administration. But the fact that, so now they have to rebuild it, he's saying. Oh, they broke the whole system apart, so now we have to rebuild it, and we're letting in all these unaccompanied minors. The question of whether or not that's a more humane way to deal with these children, to sort of force them to be separated from their parents so that they can be brought across the border, I think is just a very, very tough argument to make. So I think a lot of people at home they're scratching their head. Obviously, the border's open, hundreds of thousands of people pouring across it, and this is becoming an increasingly difficult political situation for the Biden administration.
Where is Kamala Harris, Austin? She's in charge of the border crisis, and clearly she's doing a blockbuster of a job.
Well, they had stumbles of presentation for the vice president, for sure. She seems to have tried to back away from that issue somewhat. I think one thing about the surge is that this is comparing to the year of the pandemic. If you actually compare to a normal year, this surge is not out of the ordinary. There's an article in the Texas Tribune that showed that at the same point this year, when there were 419,000 people illegally coming across the border, in 2019 it was 450,000. So it is comparable to that. The achievement of the Trump administration was not reducing illegal immigration into the United States. It was reducing legal immigration. They cut legal immigrants, student visas, and others by more than 60%. And I would argue that's a mistake.
Right.
I think that was not the way to go about it.
And I would love to get to the point where we could talk about that, talk about reforming immigration, but we can't without border security. 1.3 million people have already come year to date across the border. 19,000 kids. And because you left the first 1,000 in and said you can stay, you got 18,000 more people selling their house or their mud hut or their lean-to in order to get their child to put with a stranger to go thousands of miles through dangerous situations to try to get to our country and hope for the best. Instead, they stay in a military base or they go in a tent with other COVID victims. There's no winners here. Mayorkas knows better. Tom Homan says Mayorkas knows the issues, and I believe that he's the fall guy for this. The vice president won't step up. Can you imagine? The vice president says kind of step back. It's like, oh, Greg, we need you to host the 5. And he goes, I'm going to kind of step back. No, your seat would be empty. That's not an option.
Ryan is trying to take over here.
Right.
That's what this is.
Yes. Guys, when I started talking, there was a minute left. What I'm trying to say is this is an unmitigated disaster. It was totally preventable. And for Joe Biden to be in Delaware and hiding out on vacation with Afghanistan falling apart and this border coming to pieces in the middle of a pandemic is inexcusable.
I have one question before we go, Greg Gutfeld. Who are the 35% of the people polled who think that the immigration and the border crisis is okay, who approve of it? Who are those people?
I don't know who they are, but I think that in every poll, there's between 25 and 35% idiots. That's what they are.
Okay. Crackhead idiot.
Yes. No, that's Brian.
Well, thank you. But by the way, a lot of people don't think we should have a border. It's not right for us to have a border. You know that's been the
No
talk.
ICE, no Homeland Security, no protection.
The squad.
Great. So they can talk to the people who have lost relatives to drug overdoses and fentanyl overdoses just in the last year, up 30% in 2020. Talk to those people suffering, or talk to, anybody who is hammered and damaged by the human trafficking and drug trafficking.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.